Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. Mark, good to see you.
Great to see you, Paul. Great to be here as well.
Yeah, listen, thanks for covering me and actually doing a better job while I was out in the hills of Utah, nearly getting killed on a mountain bike. Yeah, so very, very long fourth. I think if you'd see me, I've got some kind of crazy-looking suntan, tan lines on my feet here. Ramsey, how are you? How was your fourth?
Fantastic. Just great time with the family, and great to be back here. Yeah,
and a great show last week. Super interesting topic, and thanks for getting Byron here today. Today's guest is somebody really special, Jim Kerley, and I want to welcome Jim, who today is managing partner of Clearview Partners. Jim calls himself a strategic leader, an executive coach, speaker, idea guy, and collaborator. Now, I'd add a few more to that list, Jim. Should have let me do your website. Counselor, mentor, industry sage, and an entrepreneur. I mean, you've walked on, the corporate side, and you've also, actually have some you've had success as an entrepreneur in a couple different ventures. So, Jim, first of all, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. It's a thrill and an honor. So, Let's see if we can live up to it.
Oh, this will be a great one. So, I guess for people who may not know you, kind of tell us first, what are you doing today, and then take a step back and say, what was your path to getting to where you are?
Sure. Well, today, Paul, I have a very boutique consulting firm, totally in the insurance space. It's a global organization. We've been fortunate enough to begin to work with very, very large international client we've been working with now for a year and a half. I work domestically with 2 or 3 insurance carriers. And my business model is straightforward. I live in a world of strategic consulting, helping companies with very specific consulting projects. And I also represent a number of what I think are leading edge boutique companies that solve specific needs for the insurance business today. And our position in the marketplace is pretty simple. We want to be partners in transformation. And every company globally is going through some kind of transformation. So that's what we do. We have a couple of really interesting partners, a fellow by the name of Rob Papazzi, who is up in Canada. I've worked for Sun Life for many years. He's been a partner of mine now for a couple of years. And just this week, we're announcing that Mark Singleton is joining us from LL Global as he
Excellent.
So we're looking forward to his contribution as a former CEO and a CFO. He's got that real strategic mindset that we need to help our clients in the world of finance, in the world of distribution and strategy.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk more about that, but just kind of walk us through through your background. How did you get to where you are? We crossed paths a couple of times, and almost crossed at least once in New England, but didn't officially.
I graduated from college, and a week later, I walked up the steps of 501 Boylston Street in Boston and started a 25-year career with the New England Mutual Life Insurance Company, which went through several iterations, as did I professionally. And so after 25 years, it was a great chance for me and 3 other people from the New England to start a marketing firm called Trinity Communications. And we took a number of people from the New England organization, started up our own company, and went from 0 to the 5th largest marketing communications firm in New England in 5 years. And it was a really exciting time. And then I, like many, had an opportunity in the early 2000s to go to work for a venture-funded startup. Oops, that bubble popped. And that led me to a career in consulting. I started my company, Clearview Partners, back then. I did a lot of work with Limra. And one day I was in the office of Bob Kersner, who was the former CEO. He's now retired. And he told me in no uncertain terms that I was going to come to work for Limra. And when could I start? Well, it was almost November, so I took a couple of months off to go to Florida and play golf. But ultimately, I had a 14-year run with Limra and Loma, now LL Global. I ran their commercial division, the president of the commercial division. We developed products for global consumption, everything from assessments to consulting to compliance products, a lot of social media development work in that time. And then ultimately, the last 5 years, I served as the chief membership officer, where I got to travel literally around the world, meeting with insurance executives and seeing firsthand the state of the industry. And it's been a great jumping off platform as I work with clients around the world now, helping them in their transformation journey. So that's the long, short story of many years of business, specifically in the insurance marketplace.
Well, let me throw a softball question to you, which is so makes sense of some of this change in the industry for us. Wow.
That's a softball?
That's a softball. So
That's a softball question.
That is a softball. I mean,
like a medicine ball.
We can start by pieces, Jim. If you were to try to start to peel the layer of the onion here, I mean, every email I get with some news alert, it's like a company's pulling out of a market, they're shutting something down, they're exiting this, they're buying.
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking about that. Is there really going to be a life insurance company left? There may be wealth management companies that sell life insurance. As I went through my career for many years, companies shifted from becoming a pure life insurance company, term and whole life, to expanding their portfolio, went radical and built out a universal life. And then they really got hot and they went to variable life, right? And then what happened was companies started to diversify. First they went to securities, mutual funds, got their agents licensed in all of the appropriate securities licenses, built out a wealth management platform. And now, as the world sits today, what do we have? We have an industry that is restrained by interest rates and earnings. We have an industry that is looking at shifting dynamics. Every angle of a consumer interaction today is different than the business model the life insurance industry built over the last 100 years. We have our manufacturing process. We call it underwriting, but it's really our manufacturing process is outdated, rapidly changing, no question about it. But it's, show me an industry that's using the same manufacturing process today that they started with 25 years ago or 100 years ago. It doesn't exist. And so what we're doing as an industry today is confronting the future as we live in the present. And the present for us requires significant change. A friend of mine, Paul Kessler, with whom I do a lot of strategy coaching, calls it simultaneous dual functioning. In other words, living in today's world while you change the world of tomorrow. It's very hard to do. So our capacities are stretched. When we think about the pandemic, the one thing I love about the results of the pandemic for us, with all the tragedy and all the suffering, was that we were open for business every single day. We kept our promises, whether it be a death benefit for one of the tragic thousands and thousands of people that lost their lives and their families were impacted, or disability or health claims. We were there, and we continue to be there. So our promise is a sound promise. The question is, how do we reformat the fundamental structure of the life insurance industry? Continue to make that promise and recognize the realities of how you run an effective, efficient, and profitable company in today's world. I think that sort of summarizes the kind of the state of the state. And we can check off, all of the things. shifting strategies for the manufacturing platforms. And we've seen today a number of attempts. Companies are going straight through processing, e-delivery, e-underwriting. You know, you can look at great models. Penn Mutual is a great straight-through processing model. There are a number of companies that are doing that, many companies embracing that today. We're seeing startup companies that are changing the world, and they really are. I think there's a question of, lots of progress around and lots of energy around direct-to-consumer. You know, we have to stop and think, though, still today, most life insurance is sold by agents face-to-face. Now, will that shift over time? Sure. So the underwriting issue is rapidly changing, and the science is changing, the medical practices are changing. We could go into all of that with experts they're far more capable than I am. I think the area that I see us looking at most directly is distribution. And what's two questions: what do consumers want? How do they want to buy? And we're not defining that; they're defining that, and we have to be there for them. We have to sell to a marketplace with the strategies that marketplace wants to use to buy. The second piece is, what do we do with our advisors? Today, if you look around the globe, heavily brokerage, independent brokerage. Go through Europe, heavily independent brokerage, bank assurance. Go to Asia, it's heavily driven by, we call it tied agents, traditional, basically mostly part-time, thousands and thousands of part-time agents selling little policies. And we see bank assurance with a different product set. You can go to South America, leaders in life insurance, heavily bank assurance driven. So there are different models out there that are emerging. And I think as we think about practices in the U.S., we can learn from the international experiences. And they're doing some wonderful things based on the work that I'm doing. I'm now working with a company that has business operations in 25 countries, and we're involved with 20 different countries to talk about how we help them change their way of selling and their interaction with customers. So I think we've got a lot of work to do. I also wonder about the new agent of the future and how that, the agent of the future is going to be a chat. It's going to be a call center. It's going to be an online presence. Right? So that's just a little bit of what I see on the distribution side. I'm very bullish on us serving the marketplace.
So, you have this fantastic perspective because you have all this history. I'm going to call it vertical history of working here in the U.S. And then you've got this horizontal history. Maybe that's not quite the shape. Earth isn't flat. You get the idea. This global perspective. And so I'm curious. You mentioned a lot of different models in different countries. Is there any particular model you've seen that you say to yourself, I wish we did this here in the U.S.? Like, is there something that's happening in another market that we really should think about adopting here?
Well, I think that the model that we have not had any significant progress in, you could argue points of minor differentiation, but it's getting the customers through banks. We really haven't been successful in changing our product model, our distribution model, to really align to the banks, and partly driven by, we live in a regulated world. So that's part of it, right? I think regulators need to think about what customers want today, the ease of doing business. We need to behave with the best interest of our customers in mind, which, by the way, is a global phenomenon. Even in the China marketplace, they're worrying about best interest of the customer. Right?
Interesting.
So I would say, that's one area. I also think that if we could ever get the stock jockeys to really understand where the protection block of the business fits and we deliver a simple transaction-based both product opportunity and, more importantly, an experience opportunity that will drive a lot of sales in the higher end marketplaces. The fundamental gap in life insurance, and Limra research continues to show that. And I think what's going to happen, Ramsey, is that here in the United States is clearly going to have a bifurcation of the sales model. And I think it's going to look a lot like the travel industry today.
Okay.
Now, Paul, you may have done all your bookings to go to Utah or wherever you went, Wyoming, I can't remember. But some other person can go to a boutique travel agency and book the high-end trips. You know, when we used to go traveling, and we'd use an agency because they could plan it soup to nuts. But so that's, you know, that relates to wealth management. It relates to the insurance needs of business owners, high income earners, you know, the wealth marketplace, where strategy is really important and critical advice, where you bring together teams, the accountant, the lawyers, the life insurance specialists, the wealth managers. I think that's going to be a continued, highly refined business and there'll be companies that serve that market exceptionally well. And I think there are, go ahead. And then I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a separation, and the middle market's going to be served by a couple of marketing firms. Like, I think the fraternal marketplace, the fraternal markets have a huge opportunity for growth. Why? They have a value proposition that is connected to society today. They have a natural market of affinity, religious affinity, social affinity, you name it. And they're serving the middle market in local markets that need penetration. So I'm really bullish on the fraternal marketplace, and I think that's an area for significant growth. And then I think the third piece is going to be serving customers online, on demand, because more and more they're going to come to a realization that they need some basic coverage. And that's going to be, you know, heavily term, maybe some traditional whole life products. And then the last area that I think we may actually, over time, break the ice on is how you sell units of insurance. How do you fulfill the promise of your 401k plan, for example, if you die prematurely? Shouldn't we have a way to figure that out? How do you more effectively annuitize a pool of retirement money that's in a 401k plan, or, you know, other kinds of tax benefited savings plans? I think there's room for enhancement and growth there. So I think we're just on the road of change. I think the transformation that we had to go through the pandemic has taught us 2 or 3 fundamental principles. The first principle I think it taught us is that we can change rapidly, adapt rapidly, and our employee base in the insurance industry will actually change with us, and we're a lot more nimble than we thought we were. I think the second thing that we're learning is that we can embrace technology in a different way and use it to run our businesses a heck of a lot more efficiently than we ever did. I can't tell you how many insurance companies had pilots going on transformation kinds of technologies. And what happened when the pandemic hit? They pulled off all the chains, and they just went for it. And there are companies today that are doing things that they would have guessed 5 years. It would take 5 years to do, but they're doing it today. One of my clients at the beginning of the pandemic, couldn't spell Zoom. But in 2 weeks, they went from I can't spell Zoom to having their entire sales organization and their entire employee base working virtually using Teams, using Zoom technologies, and they never missed a beat. Matter of fact, they had one of the best sales years they ever had. So that's just one very minor example of how we can be adaptive. The question I have really is, are they going to keep running at the same rate? And so as organizations think about, and this is not just the insurance industry, it's virtually every industry and virtually around the world. The question is, are we going to bring our workforce back? Well, so we got to have to worry about workforce, work style, and work presence. And we have to answer those questions in the context of how we want our companies to run. But I can tell you, I was with my partner. I snuck out and played a little golf yesterday, and she said she was talking to one of her colleagues, and the woman said, by the way, she said, I'll be working in Hawaii for the rest of the summer. The woman lives in New York. Unannounced, she went to Hawaii. If she has a 3 o'clock call in Hawaii to make the 9 o'clock call on whatever time zone changes in New York or in Boston, she's willing to do that. That's work style, that's workplace, right? So I think we're going to struggle with that for a little bit. And the story is not written yet, how we work together, how we collaborate. But I think you're going to see significant changes in all of that. And I think those changes will apply to how we sell life insurance, how we engage with clients, how we interact with customers. So I think I was giving you some lessons learned. I think the other lesson that we are starting to learn is that the digital transformation for the advisors is not the connection between the advisor and the home office, not the connection of the advisor and the IMO or the agency. It's the digital connection of the advisor to the client. And we're not there yet. You think of all the money that's being invested in direct-to-consumer, for example, or in new, getting rid of legacy systems because they're not working and they're too complicated. There's no way we're going to string them together with duct tape to make them work in today's world. What's the one area that we really haven't focused on yet with significant investment? It's how to change the job of the advisor in a virtual and digital world. And companies are starting to do that. Companies are starting to say, hey, wait a minute. And actually advisors are starting to say, you know what, I need a different set of tools and technology that will simulate the buying experience that my customer wants. You're doing it, Paul, with some of the work you're doing, right? So embedding direct-to-consumer technology and tools into the hands of the advisor. So a customer can communicate pretty much any way they want, in concert with the agent, independently of the agent. And that piece of the business is not yet, I think, defined as well as it needs to be. And that will be a significant change agent for us, I think. And will also validate the importance of a face-to-face advisor, even though we've redefined face-to-face to be something like we're doing today.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Jim, it's it really there really is an opportunity to rewire the business to support that kind of interaction. But when I say rewire, and you know this, it really is rewiring it. And Mark and I had some Ramsey's part of this, some just great success here the last couple of months with one of the quote experiments we did. Mark, I'm trying to get people to say, okay, how do you not call this an experiment? How do you call this a business? But Jim, it's scary for people. 10%, as hard as the technology is, I think, 10% of the effort really is the technology. The other 90% is making people feel comfortable with the change and not seeing this as dangerous to the way they built their business or their practice.
Well, you've got advisors that have been in business for a long, long time, and their business practice is very strong. And so how do you retool them? I guess you retool them over a long haul, like you retool them on how to use their smartphone, or how to change the station on their cable TV. It's a long haul, and you're right. We tend to overinvest in development and underinvest in launch and training universally. And I've had this conversation with executives and say, "Oh, we're putting in a whole new e-platform. I'll tell you, we're going to have end-to-end processing. This baby is going to be so slick." Right? By the way, it is. And then I ask them this question. So what are you doing to help an advisor understand how this technology will allow them, not to use the technology, but allow them to reorient their practice? Because in theory, these new technologies, what are they designed to do? Speed of processing, make it easy to do business. In theory, that frees up agents to do what they do best, which is to talk to clients. So, we have a lot of work to do there, and I don't think we're, as an industry, quite there yet. Certainly, individual companies are ahead of the curve. I know you could pick out the big mutuals, for example, the Northwestern Mutual and New York Life. They're really helping their agents and advisors become very technology savvy, very digitally service oriented. But what do we do for the thousands and thousands of brokers that write business for you? Independent advisors. They need help as well. So can we build a universal platform that's going to really help them, with their client interaction? Let's see. It's the dream.
I mean, that's the challenge, is that part of it's technology, part of it's changing habits, and that's always the hardest part. The hardest thing in finance is changing behavior.
Yeah.
And a non-optimized process that somebody's familiar with and has paid the bills for 20 years is, it can be the path of least resistance. Can be sort of drag your feet and stick with that versus going to something that can be new and transformational. So, look, all four of us, we're all believers in the next paradigm. The question is, how do we get people to how do we really sort of move the needle on adoption? And that's a real challenge.
It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting in terms of, what the pandemic did is it really forced the hand of a lot of people to make that change to go digital. And you have a lot of agents now that we're working with that, number one, had their best year last year, but by making that change, and you talk to them today, they'll never go back to solely doing face-to-face client meetings. It's added so much in terms of their efficiencies and also broadened their market, geographically in terms of, where they can see people. So I think that, that change is begun. I guess the big question is where does it go from here? And how do you get more people adapting to it going forward?
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark, that what lots and lots of agents found out was that their business of running around the countryside, seeing people face to face, from coffee, lunch, and dinner, corporate boardrooms to kitchen tables, was about as efficient or inefficient rather, as you could possibly get. And I'm sure that what we've discovered is that the ability to go face-to-face virtually, first of all, appointments are actually kept. The appointment rate success, I think, has gone up. The efficiencies of the appointments have gone up. And for those those advisors who have mastered the ability to share screens and to run illustrations dynamically and to have conversations with clients in a different way, you're right, their business has been very, very successful. But that's only the face-to-face connection. That's the replacement of the appointment. It's not the replacement of the business model. So many of those agents that had their best year are probably not saying, and by the way, let me make sure I introduce you to our web-based technology that you could be using independently of me. I'll find out when you're using it, and I'll be able to call you, but use it independently of me. You know, I think the consumer today, we all know this, they want control. They want to make decisions on their own time. And for our industry, they really do want help. But allowing a consumer to reach out or allowing an advisor to follow up after a consumer has done something on a website or a chat, you know, that's the interaction that we haven't built yet. And I think that's what the next step is going to be. Really, Paul, you know, as you said it, you got to change the whole model. You've got to rewire everything. And by the way, we're being trained to rewire our behavior every day by the Amazons and the, you know, Facebooks and the social media presence and the, you know, you name it. We're being rewired. So why can't we rewire our industry at the same time?
And I think you really hit on it in terms of it's really kind of a shift of control from the advisor or agent to the client. You know, the advisor and agent are certainly concerned that they're not going to be in the loop if the client starts bypassing them going directly. And as long as they can feel comfortable with that, you know, that should be far bit more beneficial for their business. Allow them to free up a lot more time to go out and develop more business. But I think it's that whole mindset in terms of, you know, making sure that they're feeling like they're in the loop throughout the entire process.
You know, it's the frustration for me, for a guy that grew up in the career agency system, watched that system slowly shift and morph and change. We are at an intersection where the young generation of today want social interaction. They want to serve for a greater good. They want to be innovative in what they do every day of their lives. They want to have meaning. Right? And customers, them and their peers, and even old guys like me are saying, you know what? We really need the protection. We are absolutely, we understand now that we need insurance. We need to be protected. So there's this intersection of heightened buyer interest and opportunities for bringing the younger generation into our business. The problem is that we don't have as robust a mechanism today to bring the next generation in. And it's sad. It really is sad, because I think there's huge opportunity in the marketplace for consultative selling. Remember that term? It was like 100 years old, but that's what it is. They want to meet with an advisor, right? And so I think that's why if we could get other segments of our industry to really embrace that, you know, even if it's working with the brokerage community and getting next generation advisors into their shop, one or two people at a time, that's as good as bringing on a career agent in my book.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, Jim, you mentioned sort of two innovation tracks that I heard. One was, okay, we're going to take these pilots and we're going to, you use the word unchain the innovation, let it the technology roll. The other was how we adapted as organizations, took to Zoom, took to Teams. What's probably the most important, you know, innovation direction, or how do these more change going forward? Is innovation going to be technology squared, or is it going to be sort of rewriting the corporate operating system? How do we work? What is work? Where is it? What's the most important aspect you think we need to focus on as an industry or as a company over the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, I think the next 12 to 18 months is all about I made a note to say, you know, we're pressing the restart button on a lot of the workplace, workspace, work style question. And that's going to drive the use of technology differently. But first and foremost, what it's going to drive is executive teams and managers to think differently about how they manage employees from wherever they work. And that's going to consume the next year. And we're going to have starts and stops. And, you know, over time, we're going to build, I think, a very effective hybrid model where, you know, some people can work from, you know, Des Moines 100% of their time from their living room, and others can work 3 days a week in the office, 2 days at home. You're going to see that as a refinement over the next year. And that's going to take a lot of work. These companies have been built for everybody's in the office. It's going to take a lot of restructuring of space. It's going to take a lot of restructuring of technology and systems. But I think first and foremost, it's going to take a restructuring of your mindset up here as a leader and as a manager, because for the most part, employees want to do a good job. And we've seen that over the pandemic. I mean, the number of hours that employees at work has far exceeded the savings in commuter time that everybody thought they had. You know, if you're commuting an hour a day, 2 hours a day, you figured, oh, great, I got an extra 2 hours a day. Well, you know what people did? They worked. Sure, they might have done their laundry, but they worked. So, you know, I think there's a really interesting balance around that. So that's sort of the corporate piece that I see happening. And I think and simultaneously with that will be the continual digitization of the internal business, making changes in the operating models, restaffing models to accommodate the new technology platforms and the way we do business. So there's a huge corporate enterprise piece that has to continue to go on. And at the same time, we have to worry about how we're going to market, with whom, what's our sales channel model going to be, or sales channels, plural, and how do we think about product differently that will impact the success of sales in the particular model, a channel model they're going after. You know, you just can't throw an old traditional UL product on a direct-to-consumer chassis. Now, there are pieces of that UL product that might work, but it's not just throw it on the chassis, right? It's, you know, how do you build a chat system and a call center staffing system that can respond to the online direct consumer model in a business that has traditionally been face-to-face. So that, you know, that whole piece of work is going to happen. And then, as I said before, I think, and we've talked about a lot, is retooling the advisor's practice, no matter what kind of an advisor you are. You know, if we can really come to market in the wealth space with an insurance product and system that is really easy to use, doesn't threaten the broker or, you know, the stockbroker who says, geez, I can't possibly do this because it's going to totally screw up my relationship. Can you imagine it takes 6 weeks to underwrite a case? No wonder we were never successful. But if you can say, look, we can take about 6 minutes to underwrite a case, is that okay? Maybe we'll, you know, Ramsey, maybe you've got a point of view on that. You know?
I'd like to see the underwriting process be as efficient as possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's, you know, one of the challenges is that you can create a fantastic front end, but if it ends up, you know, running up against a process on the back end that hasn't changed, you know, all the gains that you realized from that UX, giving that travel industry UX you referenced before, suddenly starts to dissipate. So you really have to have the whole system has to work, or it doesn't sort of meet up to its full promise.
Oh yes, we've lived that.
Yeah, you've lived it firsthand.
Yes, yeah. Mark and Ramsey can document it for you. Yeah, Jim, this has been great. I mean, I guess we're at the sort of top of the time here. Mark, do you have any final questions or thoughts for Jim?
No, I guess dovetailing on what Ramsey had asked earlier as it relates to different parts of the world from the consumer perspective. Are there different areas in the world that you find consumers more willing to adapt to digital processes than they are in the U.S.? And is there any specific reasons behind that?
Well, I would say that the world leader in technology adoption, the world leader in use of PayPal equivalents would be China and Asia generally. Much more embracing the use of technology to sort of run the economy. Use your phone. The last time I was in China, I was introduced to some folks, and a colleague of mine who happened to be Chinese was also introduced. And we have a wonderful business card exchange ceremony, right? So we all did that properly. And at the end of the meeting, one of my Chinese colleagues and another person I was meeting with, they took their smartphones, they put them on top of each other, click, so they get their contact information. That's the metaphor for what's going on in Asia. I think so that's the technology answer I would give you. But I would say this about consumers across the globe. For our business, they're the same. They want to protect their families. They know they need life insurance. It may be a different form, a different structure, but they know they need protection. They know they want advice. And there's a huge global marketplace for our business. And it may take one form or another if you're in Brazil versus, Peru, or if you're in China versus Switzerland or Czechoslovakia. But the business issues are the same. Now, we've been working for a year and a half with a client, as I mentioned earlier in the show, that has business operations in about 25 different countries. And we're basically working with representatives in 20 of those 25 marketplaces. Business issues are the same. Digital transformation the same. Customer experience the same. Business transformation issues are the same. So we live in a global world today in our business, and we need to learn from each other globally, and that's the message I would give executives today. If you're not looking outside of the United States, give me a call. I can point you in some direction, or connect with a global partner that can really help you.
That's great, Ramsey.
This has been great. Thank you for bringing your perspective. And as I mentioned earlier, you don't often find people that have the long history, because there's a lot. Well, this is one of the things we learned from our last guest, is that having that historical context is super valuable. And then all the insights you have from working with other companies around the world is very helpful. So thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. I would close with this, and this is really my position in life. I've had a great run, 50 years, more than 50 years in this business. And the past 50 years were wonderful. The next 5 are going to be really thrilling. And we're going to see, if you're not looking forward, you're not going to be successful. The past was great. The future is absolutely outstanding. And the executives and the professionals that, force that on their businesses, encourage that on their businesses, will be successful. There's so much exciting opportunity ahead that, that's why I still do what I do every day.
Hey, well, Jim, thanks so much. And, thanks for all the advice and counsel you've given me over the years. What's the best way for people to find you and start conversations? Website, email, LinkedIn?
Website, Clearview Partners USA. Google me, and link, send a LinkedIn message, and I'd love to connect with you that way. That's J. Kerley, Kerley. There's a spelling mistake, I noticed. Kerley at ClearviewPartnersUSA.com.
Excellent.
And
all right.
they can always call you.
Yes. we'll point them in your direction. So, hey, listen, thanks everybody. Mark, Ramsey, Jim, thanks again, and thanks to all our listeners. And tune in again next week for another episode of That Annuity Show.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.